Since my mom passed away last September 23rd, um, my dad's really gotten into some nostalgic mode. You know, me and my mom had sort of an understanding before she got really ill about sticking around and taking care of her, and that actually ended up kind of taking care of my dad. If I'm not breaking the law or getting into trouble, my dad's not really alive, and it kind of sucked him in quite a bit with that dementia. And it was a full-time job for him. And once he finally passed away, it took him a few weeks, and it finally hit him. And as he said at the funeral, which I thought was very poignant, he didn't feel like he lost a wife. He felt like he lost a best friend. But he went through the house and he grabbed all these pictures that were actually on slides, and he had them developed. And I hadn't even seen some of these. That's a great picture. That's my dad. He's 33. He was drag racing at the time. This is May 1st of 71. My mom and my older brother Ron. Now, Ron was born to my mother when she was 16 years old. And the guy left her, and she raised Ron by herself with my grandmother on my mom's side, who died before I was born, all by herself. And it's quite amazing to look at single moms these days, where I'm actually enamored and think that they're just complete heroes. Same with a single dad. And that my mom was doing that back in the 1950s and 60s, or in the 60s basically. And the way my dad describes it and my mom describes it is that when they met each other, it was such a relief. Like, my dad needed somebody and my mom definitely needed somebody. And my brother got along with my dad great. But clearly, being born to my mom at 16 and the father not being around, as you can tell, he was very close with my grandmother. That's Jim, my grandfather, who... There's quite an interesting story with him, I just recently found out that my mother, who was born in 1943 during World War II, has a stepbrother. I was stunned at this. No one in the family knew this. I found it doing research on my family, and the funny thing about the stepbrother is he's only a few days older than my mom. His name is Michael. It was during the war, and I guess my grandfather, I forgot what injury he had, didn't go off to war, and so there weren't many guys around, but there were a lot of women around. So I can kind of understand why my mom was always bitter. And as you can see here, Ron and my grandmother were very close. He stands out a little bit. Picture is very telling. My grandmother on my dad's side, she was so excited. Finally, we got rid of him. She was so funny. But he made it up to a lot of us, and he came, and he definitely was a huge part of our family. Jim, they lived in Arizona with his wife, Smiley. And when my grandfather passed away, her and my mom and Smiley really bonded. I guess you would call her my mom's step-grandmother. And that was a house in Arizona. Then Smiley got sick. I was living with Wendy in LA, and my mom called me up on the phone, and she said, "Don, can you come down here and bring some of your friends? I got a problem." I said, "Well, what's wrong?" She goes, "Smiley's in the emergency room. She's dying, and her family that I didn't even know existed is down here, and they want to pull the plug." I mean, one of those scenarios that it just stuns me, where these people just want people to get killed off so that they can have the money and the property and whatever. And there wasn't even that much, you know what I mean? It's Arizona. She's by herself. So, it's my mom's little kid. So, in a classic movie sense, Smiley, at the last minute before she died, signed everything over to my mother, and none of it to her greedy family. And when my mom called me, they were looting the house in Arizona and taking the gold and taking all the furniture and whatever they could. And there was still stuff left there. And when I moved up here, me and my mom finally got time to go down there. We went down there for a couple of weeks, and me and my mom bonded. Sure, on the wedding day. My mom and my brother. What a great single mom, huh? And me and my mom really bonded. I liked the house a lot. It was really cool. It had 2222 is the address of the place. The coolest neighbors ever that took care of Smiley. In fact, my mom being so generous, when she found out that the house was given to her, she did not expect that. She actually allowed a neighbor kid who was training to be in the Air Force to stay and live in the house by himself without having to pay any of the electricity or phone bills, because of how nice he was to my step-grandmother, if you want to call it that. My mom's stepmom. My mom. A little hottie back then. I don't know where my dad got these pictures. That's Tahiti. They went to Tahiti for the honeymoon. As my mom got sick, she knew that I was going to be giving up a lot staying up here. People think that, we just want to go live with your mom and dad. I had plans on coming back to LA, but my mom just had some concerns about money and things like that. My dad tends to be very nervous about spending money, and she did not want to be put in a home or anything like that, and she knew that her mental state was leaving her. And so there were some pretty heartfelt promises made to her, and I stayed here, and it actually ended up, like I said, there was nothing I could do for her except try to make sure that the money was spent right and basically help my dad, who was getting sucked into it. It was dementia. It's tough, man. It pulls you in. And, he didn't think about home nursing because it cost money. And it wasn't covered by insurance. And he didn't think about all these things. And so, I'm glad I was here for that. But, I kind of missed out on life. But hey, I partied and been with people my whole life. It was nothing I was regretting. And, I miss my mom a lot when it comes to that. But those last 2 years were very difficult. It's me and my mom. This is in Encino, California, the Grimes house, 1972. My older brother, spending all those years with my mom, he was part of what I call the Boogie Nights generation. He went out and partied a lot. Now, I'm assuming, I know he was gay, but I don't know if he was bisexual or what it was, because he had lots of hot girlfriends and lots of hot boyfriends. He worked the front desk at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and at first, in 1990, this is pre-Magic Johnson, we really did think he had cancer, or at least that's what we were told. And that was very difficult for my mom. That totally devastated her. I'd never seen my mom the same when he died, in front of all of us. And I'm not trying to be so sad and depressed, but I'm just saying, she'd gone through a lot. And my brother was one of the coolest fucking people in the world, my older brother. It's funny, whenever I hear people, people said that if he was in the same room with someone with AIDS, he would catch AIDS. And I remember him falling out of bed in the middle of the night, looking like he had been out of a death camp in Germany, and having no problem at all picking him up. We had no clothes on or anything. I wasn't, and sores on his body. You don't let that shit get in your way. But it's so amazing to me whenever I hear like some redneck or some motherfucker talking shit and gay bashing, which is ironic because I'm like, the gay guy's not going to take your wife or your girlfriend. Why don't you go out and bash a guy who's a threat to a girl? Because the quote apocalypse now, if we can get rid of 10 rednecks or bigots and replace them with 10 of my brothers who I didn't even know who was a homosexual or gay, he was just a partier, but he was such a nice guy. I assure you many of the problems we have on this planet would be long gone if we could replace my brother with them. I remember for my birthday, my 16th birthday, I was expecting a bunch of money. Look at me going to school there in the rabbit. And instead he gives me a damn card with a key in it because my grandmother, or his grandmother, my grandmother too, had a house in Manhattan Beach right near the beach. This is back in the 1940s and 50s. So he had the house, and he gave me a key to the house. He's like, here. And I go, what the hell is this for? He goes, you'll know what it's for. I'm like, no, I don't. He goes, trust me, you'll know what it's for. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'd rather have cash, but I'll come down and visit you. I came down and visited him anyways. Then about 6 months later, me, Mom, and Dad got into a huge brawl, a huge fight. You know how those fights go. And I had no place to go. I couldn't go to my friends. I couldn't go anywhere. And then I realized, wait a second. My brother's out of town. I have my brother's key in Manhattan Beach. I had a car. I could drive. I could drive down to Manhattan. That's exactly what he knew was going to happen. That's how smart he was. He knew at one point I would need a place to go and I wouldn't have a place to go. So at 16, he gave me a key to his house and said, one day you're going to need this. That's the foresight he had. But when he passed away, that was really, really rough to see him die. My mom was just totally distraught. My dad handled it amazingly well. There was never any problems at all with my dad and him. My dad quit drag racing and went straight into mechanical engineering to pay for everything. He never missed a work. My mom became the head of Executive Women International. She was one of the most successful only women, in the field she's in. She's one of the only women she does for military contracts and stuff like that. She was doing it till the day she finally just couldn't handle it anymore. She loved it. She was very successful like that, and she was very I wouldn't call her feminist, but she didn't like the fact that she had me, my brother David, the football star, me, the jailbait, always going to jail, and then Ron, who passed away. And she said, I always wish I had a daughter. And before she really started losing it, my brother, who's married, had Vander, my nephew, and finally had Scarlett Ann. And my mom, for a minute at least, finally realized what it was like to have another female in the house. But clearly she was pushed around by men, at least in her job market, because she was always convinced whenever we'd be talking about anything from football to what's for dinner, she would always start off her tone with, and I know you guys, and you guys this, and you guys think I'm this, and you guys, my dad are like, we don't think that about you, Mom. But she had a very, not animosity, but a defensive tone, because, and I'm sure it was rooted in the fact that she was that way for years with my brother and single, and working in an area that was dominated by men. She never mentioned sexual harassment or anything like that. But men think they're better than women. I mean, and here she is trying to do the same exact job, and she did the same job even better. That's why they kept her on. My dad retired, and he did race cars. My mom kept working. This is great. But I got to give her some respect. I got to give her some time. Since I go off since I'm not loved or anything, I have to go off of my own ego. I have to give some credit to my mom, my Aunt Inez, who was a nun. Ooh, true. This is my mom. I think Mazatlan. That's my mom pretending to be me. Many different hairstyles, Mom. God, she reminds me of someone I know. It's weird that the person I know kind of disappeared the same second my mom died. The thing that's amazing about my mom passing away, they kept telling her she was going to die like every week all through August. I mean, it was a living hell around here. Like, even the neighbors called the sheriff's department to check in on us, but we had nursing here, so it was okay. But like, that's how it was. Two guys can't handle that kind of crap. Oh, I like that picture of my mom right there. I'm gonna get a copy of that one. That was my mom right when she was at Computer Sciences Corporation. She would drive every day from the San Fernando Valley down to LAX. And she started her own business, Lynne and Associates. She got pretty successful at it. But just more recent. That's in the 80s. Can't you tell? But well, this is when they went to Australia, I think. My mom always wanted to travel. They never went on many vacations. Her and my grandma. But look, that's me and my mom passed out on the couch in Encino. Well, that's my mom and my older brother's graduation. Reseda High School. That's a great picture. That's my mom, me, obviously, and my grandmother in Calabasas. My grandmother died at 101. She was born in 1899 and died in 2001. Amazing. So why do I show you this? Well, this Karina, my brother's wife, go to the beach. I don't know. I just show you this to give respect to my mom. And something my mom always said that I thought was really fascinating, that when my brother died, me and her talked a lot. Me and Mom, I'm kind of like that. I can always talk to women about stuff like that, and not to mention it was my brother. And she said, when you think of Ron, remember how sick he looked? He had sores all over his body. I mean, he was dying. She went through a lot of the pain he did for a different reason. And she said, when you think about him, do you remember him as he was when he was dying, when you saw him die, like looking like a dead man? And I said, no, it's funny, I don't. I remember him like when he would drive down the street at 80 miles an hour and scare his kids and get us ice cream at Baskin Robbins. Like, I remember him like the funniest time. And she goes, exactly. She goes, you always remember people not how they were when they died, but by their best moments. I thought that was one of the most observant things she ever said to me, because it's true. When I think back about people that I know that have died, I don't think about my one friend of seeing a bullet in his head. I don't think about my mom talking craziness, having dementia. I remember her like this. It's interesting human beings do that, because when we see each other in regular life, we usually think of each other as the last time we saw ourselves. But when you're dead, when they pass away, you remember them the way you remember them best. And I think that's the way they want it. But it's funny that the human mind does that. The human mind seems to be programmed towards death to know. Do not remember them with the spear in their body. Do not remember them when they were starving. That can be nightmares for you, maybe. Remember them when they were at their best. And that's how I remember my mom. She said the funniest shit. Oh, that's my favorite picture of her. 1977, her and my brother. Oh, Mitzi and Tammy, and she knows. You know, for someone who's spiritual like me, death becomes very sacred. And I did my best for her. And she demanded that I keep that house in Arizona. But I didn't. No, you know who wanted it, of course. Within the moment she passed away, it was a sneaky way of Don, can you sign this paperwork for me? Yeah, like I didn't know that it was to relinquish the home to him, because she wanted me to have it and she insisted it. But I'm not going to be a part of a lot of people out there, and a lot of you say you're not that way, you are that way, who turn into fucking hungry wolves when someone passes away. Einstein said, you know, don't worry about the material life, because that's temporary. It's the ethereal life that's permanent. Now, I would have loved a car or maybe some pocket cash, because it turns out, you know, I have nothing, you know what I mean? I got half the people thinking it's because I'm lazy, not knowing about a contract with my mom. I get a house. I give the house up. Pretty much it's my fault. I've given everything up. Why? Why not? What's more important to you? Situations like this, where you have a dead relative, or yourself? Are you selfless or selfish? Now, it was probably a big mistake, but you know what? I have big enough connections with my higher self, with God, with my angels to know I could give away a goddamn mansion and still have memories and have at least a solid enough heart to know what I'm doing is right, no matter how many of you point fingers at me. Or when I needed you the most when my mom was dying, you abandoned me. But what's amazing is my mom passed away on January 23rd at 12 noon on the dot. We were all around her bed this last September 23rd of this year. And being a conspiracy theorist, you'd think I would know it, but I was so caught up with my mom's death, I didn't pay any attention to it. But in fact, they say it all the time, but in this one, January 23rd, 2017, was actually biblically all lined up, and even other religions all lined up with a very, very unique time in astronomy and with the face. And the fact that she passed away exactly at noon is no coincidence. Thanks for listening. Peace.